And I when I walk out uh, after 15 months, I basically left like millions and millions of dollars on the table, right? Um, and for me, the reason for that is that I would still want to be hungry and kind of still have this urge of building a company. I think the opportunity cost is much higher for me than staying.
That was the voice of Jon Edward Santillan, co-founder and CEO of OCTA. I am your host, Ali Zwail, and this is the Startups Arabia podcast, where you learn about the Arab startups ecosystem from the best founders, investors, and operators in the region. My guest today is Jon Edward Santillan. Jon is the co-founder of OCTA, a platform automating financial operations for businesses, starting with accounts receivable and embedded financing. He's a second-time founder, previously building and selling Denarii to Careem. Based in Dubai, Jon's been operating in the region for over a decade, and he's now focused on helping SMEs across the Middle East get paid faster, streamline workflows, and access capital when they need it. Welcome to the Startups Arabia podcast. My guest today is Jon Edward Santillan. I hope I pronounced it right. I'm sure he'll let me know soon. I'm very happy to have him here because, on the one hand, he is a two-time founder, so he did the whole cycle in his first startup from founding all the way to exiting to Careem, and also having a transition period in Careem for a while as an employee there. And then he founded his second startup. That's the first thing. And the second thing is that I'm really very hopeful and selfishly hoping for his generosity in terms of the fact that he is the type of founder who builds in public. And so I'm sure that he'll be sharing a lot of interesting secrets and tidbits about, best practice about how to be a great founder. So with that, welcome, Jon.
No, thank you so much, Ali. It's let me correct you on that one. It's Santillan.
Santillan. All right. I
Yes,
just had a feeling I should have. I usually ask before the podcast,
it's
what the
okay.
correct pronunciation is, and I forgot. So
No,
this one's
that's
on
fine.
me. Sorry about
No,
that.
it's okay.
So great, great to have you here. I have I do follow your posts. You're someone who, as I said, is building your current startup in public, and I'm always wondering about which place to start in the guest story. Sometimes I start at the very beginning, and sometimes somewhere in the middle. But in today's case, I'd actually like to start at the very latest thing. So you recently, last year, you launched with a couple of co-founders OCTA. And
Mhm.
so tell me more about it. I mean, why did you guys start this company? And, what does it do?
Of course. So after, like you mentioned about in your intro, after I sold my previous company to Kareem, I already knew that I'm going back to company building, and the aspiration to do that is to build something bigger than I actually built before. And the premise was that to make sure that there's still some hungriness or urge to build something. So after 15 months of working with Kareem, I decided, you know what, it's time to leave the company and start looking for the next opportunity. During that time, we don't have, or I don't have the idea of what to build. In 2022, I did this thing where I invite founders to do a founders breakfast. So that is like every weekend, I invite founders from different startups. And then typically it's just like asking and learning, like what's the experience and sharing my journey of exits from Kareem, how it looks like from the optics perspective or from the journey perspective. And I've done maybe like 30, 40 founder breakfast. And one of the premise of the conversation is that, what's the most challenging thing that you are currently experiencing or you are solving in your company. And time again, there is a lot of course focus in the acquisition side because everyone would like to grow the business. But there is this signal that I'm sensing it and seeing that there's a opportunity in the collection piece of the business, which is from the collection of payment side. And that's basically where the idea of Okta kind of start to shape up. I left Careem around, I believe it was November 2023. And then I continuously doing this conversation with other founders. And one of the thing that highlights on that conversation was, why don't you, John, help me to make sure, or to help me collect payments to make sure that this collection does not go into a delinquency or the debt side. And that basically where the Okta started. And the Okta basically it's an OCTA. It stands for Optimized Collection Through Optimization. And helping, the way we do it is we're helping businesses to automate their financial operation, starting from
Hmm.
account receivables to make sure that they get paid faster. So that's basically the premise of how we started Okta.
Cool. And so fast, when you say they get paid faster, you mean faster than the due date of the invoice or faster than they did previously because they usually get paid beyond the due date?
That's correct. So the way we do it is we understand the benchmark of how are they collecting their payments, and some most majority of the companies and founders, the way they're thinking their collection is like it's a one time off, right? So you set up an email, you believe that you'll get collected, but it's a system, and it's a series of system or it's a series of process for you to get paid. So the way we do that is we understand, type of payment method that you're using to collect your payments, right? What are the processes that currently exist when you're collecting a payment? Is that you're collecting directly by nudging it through an email, or are you calling your customer, or are you sending a WhatsApp? And then after that, what are the existing tools that you are using? Is this enough for you to collect the payment side? So that gives us a benchmark of the way they're collecting at the moment. So some cases we are seeing, beyond 90 days collection of payments, right? Or beyond 120 days. They don't kind of see that one as a problem initially when they started the company, but once they start scaling the company, they start seeing becomes a problem or it's a challenge. So we go there and then we optimize that. We call it like the DSO, so daily sales outstanding. And basically the way we do it is like we optimize that one. If, for example, you are collecting 120 days or 90 days, using the platform, we can help you to optimize that or to lower that metrics by 40 to 45%. So that means allows a business to access to capital early on, to make sure to help to grow the business. So that's kind of one piece of the business from the platform perspective. The second one is that we're also providing embedded finance. So because we are seeing the data, we can preempt whether we can provide you a capital or not. So instead of you as a founder looking for institutional or banks looking for a capital for your business, we can tell you it's like, hey, founder A, right? We believe that we can actually provide you X amount of capital that you can tap into while you're waiting for your collection, right? So this is basically like the means and ways for us to help them get paid faster.
Got it. So yeah, so when I first hear about your solution, I'm thinking, at first glance, this is a SaaS product for managing invoices and AR and stuff like that. But then I see a bit of news about you and see last month you got a $20 million credit line from Sukna, and I think what I mean. Why do they need like so much cash on their balance sheet to manage the company? So how does the business model work, etc.? So maybe, and it seems that it has a relationship with that embedded finance angle. But can you tell me more about like the financial model, how this works, how you break things up? What whether it's like standalone for each part of the business, or I'm supposing it's SaaS on one side and financing on the other. How that breaks down.
Of course, there are three revenue stream for Okta. The first one is atypical revenue stream, which is the SaaS solution. So we base it depending on the volume, the number of users that using the platform. So that varies depending on the company. So when we started with, and all the learnings that we had from like early days of Okta. We started like with $49, and then we're getting more confidence about the pain point. So we start increasing it to $200 to $1,000, and then now we are at the point where I was like, what? Like like companies are willing to pay like $5,000, $6,000 per month. So that means it just validates the pain point, like for them to solve it. So that's one part of like the core revenue stream. The second one is a take rate of payment collections, right? So depending on the payment method, so if your businesses are collecting through debit card or credit card or bank transfer, or open banking, then we charge a minimum take rate on that one. So that's between X percentage, 0.1 to 0.5, depending on the volume again. So that's the second one. The third one is where all of this new credit facility came in, is this commission for every revenue finance that we're taking on from the financer partnership that we had. And think about these things more on like a lead generation for the financier, right?
Mm-hmm.
The beauty of Okta is that our customers use platform like Okta to streamline their account receivable, but not really looking for a financier. So we are the best partner, I would say, with financier to lower their credit risk, or kind of to lower the risk of onboarding their customer. That's number one. Number
Mm-hmm.
two is basically to speed up the onboarding process for them, right? Because we have this
Right.
information already, and we have all this material that actually allows us to pass this information to our partner, and then continuously to assess those risks that they are, or their criteria, to basically finance it. So those are the three things, or the three revenue streams that currently we are that currently employed in Okta.
So I have like a few areas I want to double click on in what you just said. So maybe I'll start with the last thing you said, which is working through a partners. But if and of course it's, I mean, you have very rich data. You know exactly what the expected cash flows and their expected probability of being collected is for your customers. So it makes sense for you to be a better underwriter, so to speak, for for the financing for their partners. But you said you work through partners, but at the same time you got a $20 million credit line. So what are you doing with the $20 million credit line if you're working through partners to finance?
Yeah. So we are operating in two markets at the moment. So one is in the UAE and in Saudi Arabia. About 47% of our customer base are basically out of the kingdom, and then majority are still in the UAE side. The way we operate in the UAE is that we do have about five, six financier partner or institutional partners who finance the receivables. And I'm sure you know all of these folks. Tech companies also providing these things. So basically, what help us to learn, what are the learnings by partnering with them, is like learning us where we can help to optimize the process, and use that as an advantage for other market. And hence, the $20 million credit facilities premise is basically to deploy it only in Saudi Arabia to start with,
Hmm.
and then increase the market share from there. So for the Saudi Arabia at the moment, the $20 million is basically to deploy it there, and then for the UAE is to have a different financier partnership, and that's when have a partners in UAE, and then have our own capital in
And
Saudi
so you're
Arabia.
directly providing capital in KSA.
That is correct. Through a partnership, I mean through a Sukna capital as
So
well. Yeah,
their license.
that's correct.
Yeah, got it. All right. So going back to your point about the price of the SaaS and increasing this price over time, and I'm kind of double clicking on this because reflecting on it, I've seen it with so many startups that they tend to underprice and leave so much value on the table. So they don't realize how much value they're providing, because for them, oh, this is obvious. I did this, it's so easy. I did this software. But for the customer value, it might be a totally different point of view. They're seeing the value they're getting, and that's what they're paying for, not
Yeah, yeah.
what for a software nerd might seem easy. And so what they do is they leave so much money. They tend to underprice first instead of overprice. It's better, generally speaking, to overprice at the beginning and then go down with your price rather than the opposite. And yet, almost nobody does that. It's always the same story, and it's very painful to raise prices on customers after you've onboarded them. So I was wondering about how you reflect on that journey and what you might do differently.
No, I think it's the same thing, Ali. I think we kind of fall into that trap of figure things out in the early days. I think the reflection on that one and the learning is that what is the best way to frame a discovery conversation in regards of how much value your startup or company bringing in the table, right? And there's a lot of slice and dices of that discovery call could happen, and the way we do that now is that like we create this framework of like I mentioned earlier, like what payment method are you using, how long, what's your process currently, what are the tools that you're using, and then kind of give you some metrics to lean on towards of what's the best way to price these things. But initially it's more an art than science. It's like, oh, we can start, everyone is charging $49, should we charge $49 as well, right? So
Yep, yep.
that's basically that's where we started as well, right? I think where the advantage of ours into how we learn the pricing side is that the amount of learning and the speed of learning for us to figure it out to that level of comfortability of pricing is this kind of the breaking point, right? The inflection point, because
Mm,
you could either figure these things out in a month or two, or maybe 2 years from down the road, right? But that's basically how it end up with pricing. We still feel believe that we still underprice our platform, um, but I think there are, I think will require more learnings in terms of how to position and how to kind of to send that message or to present that information to our customer, to for them to basically understand the value of the product that we are delivering.
yeah, yeah. That's the challenge with higher prices, right? Uh, and I think, yeah, I mean, we're all kind of learning as a market, because a lot of the value you're giving is through AI, and what you're doing is you're decreasing a lot of human labor costs. And so how much of that value you're creating by reducing human labor needs, you're capturing, is really something the whole market is learning all over the globe at the same
Yeah,
time.
yeah,
And
yeah.
it's a global experiment, and I think everyone will find their own point of balance. So speaking of the global market, what is your target market? I mean, do you need to is your product like, can if I'm in the US and I discover Okta's website and I register, can I just use it? Or is there like a specific localized flavor that needs to be created for every market?
I think
The AR part.
yeah. I mean, from the core of the technology, you can use it globally. It's agnostic in any location or yeah. The aspiration is to
The AR
be
part, right?
the AR part. That's correct, right? The aspiration is to become global, right? I mean, that's kind of the end goal for us. If we're gonna kind of dream anyway, let's dream big, start local and dream big.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah, to answer your question, it can be used if you are, in the US, in Europe, in Southeast Asia. But of course, with the early stage company building, you require a little bit of, I'm sure, focus, right? Our test bed definitely is the UAE, or in our region. And the interesting part, it's much more challenging here, right? So we are far behind in terms of technology adoption. So if we crack all of these things at the early stage, where I fully believe that the learning experience and the knowledge that we'll be having here are much more richer compared to
Mm,
the other market.
right.
So that's basically the idea of the focus of the moment in terms of market.
Got it. And have you like predefined a milestone or a certain level beyond which, okay, now is the time to move, say, to the US market or to the UK market or something like that? Or is it in terms of like actively marketing to that market? Or is it something that will emerge as you go?
I think we'll definitely decide and learn as we go. There is a thinking internally of again, what's a good look like. But of course, that's not always happen. For us, probably we would need to be, at the current stage, maybe up to Series A, focus in our market. And I think Series B beyond. And then again, this is more on access to capital. This is more on access to talent. This is more, and I think that's the idea. Um, but we always want to build it from the region to the world, right? Yeah,
Sounds great. So last year, last year at a time when the funding environment wasn't that great, and you guys started and you raised a $2.25 million pre-seed round with no product.
yeah,
So
yeah,
people from the outside will might look and say, hey, how do they do it so easily, etc. I realize it's probably the fruition of years of hard work. What would you tell them about the journey?
yeah. No, love it. I don't think it's. I mean, if I talk, I mean, most of the founders were that are talking to me. I was like, "Oh, John, you raise so easily." I don't think it's easy. I don't. I think definitely there's a factor of experience definitely factored in, but I was not treated differently, against the others. I've also received rejections a lot, right? And I think for me, I just treated the rejections completely different compared on my previous company. Before it was very emotional, but now there is always a meaning on that one, right? How did I end up raising a 2.2? I think one of the things that I could kind of give advice on things that's working with us was that um, I believe, and based on what I've learned from my experience raising from my previous company, is that VC-backed companies is a people business, right? And with that in mind, the question is that how can you build this relationship from the start, even if you're not raising? So that basically where I'm leaning on. So um, the capital that we've raised is from the people that I've known not only yesterday but from the from the years and years of company building from the past.
Yep.
Things that working for me and the way I structured the pre-seed side was that over communicating through a newsletter about the idea and the thinking behind of the startup that I'm going to build. So I start cherry picking a couple of people that I admire, that I got inspired, and I start sending an email of you know hey Mudasir, I'm already in the process of starting a company. I would like you to be part of this newsletter, and this is currently the things that I'm actually thinking of for this week, and then this is the thing that I'm thinking of next week. So from the time that I started, I continuously have this habit of this over communicating to the investor. And when people start reading it, and because we can measure the people who's reading the newsletter, my thinking on that one is to follow up with another email. And I said like, "Hey Ali, I noticed that you read my newsletter. What do you think about point one, point two?" So that building relationship and continuous conversation without having this pressure of, "Hey, by the way, we're raising," kind of helps to open the door of continuous discussion. So that was the main, I would say, the main framework that I've used. So there's no tactic. It's just more on discipline because it's hard to do. People like, founders was asking me, I was like, "John, how are you doing? Like sending a weekly emails?" And it's just more on storytelling. I mean, because I don't have a product yet, right? I just have, how am I thinking and what's my approach in this company building gives me an opportunity to open a discussion and eventually raise the money. The initial people that, of course, I think I wrote these things in my LinkedIn when I sent an email to Asher Sadiki from Sukna Ventures. He was the early believers, right? Amal from 500 Startup. Because I came from 500 Startup initially, Amal said like,
Hmm.
before you even start, one line of code, I would like to be the first investor. Operators, right? People that I've met in Founders Breakfast. was also like becomes the angel investor. And that's basically the way I do it. It's more on, look, I have nothing to, it's just more sharing the story and sharing the journey with you guys,
Yep.
and then it basically it works.
Yeah. It looks easy on the outside, but actually it requires a lot of discipline. Um, and actually, I mean, if you're sending a weekly newsletter, then you're still like thinking about an idea. It's not that easy to make progress week by week. In just 1 week on an idea before you start building or doing that. So I think it might have put some positive pressure on you, even in terms of accountability, in terms of what am I going to do this week so that I can share it next week, etc. So it's kind of win-win in many ways.
Yeah, definitely. I think the way I look at these things, the most hardest part in company building is the one where you get more success, like chances of success, right? And because not everyone is doing it, becomes my advantage. And that's basically how I see these things. It's also the way I think these things is also like you're going to the gym, right? It's like it's just easy to say, it's like, oh, I would like to be healthy. And it's like going to the gym is so difficult, right? But if you actually have this discipline, you'll have definitely a result. And for me, I'm
Yep.
looking more on like forward looking, like outcome than actually the short term goal. And I completely agree with you, Ali. Is that I mean, figuring out what topic or what thing to say every week, it's difficult. But the thing is, like, you're doing a lot of things like on your day-to-day stuff. It's not necessary to be company building at all. It's just more on like, hey, by the way, I talked to Hisham from Lean Technologies, and what I figured out is this is the challenges they're facing. It's like I'm actually asking them to help me think the way I think as well, and kind of be on that same mind space of where Jan is. So it's more on like initial days. It's more like, oh, I spoke to three people, and this is the outcome of three people, right? And this is the result. I don't think there's a result in here, and this is the failure, and this one doesn't make sense. And next week I'm going to talk to five more people. It's just basically like that, right? And then sending pictures of what I'm doing. I think that also gives some flavor of humanizing the connections to the people that I would
Yep.
like to
Yep.
talk to. Helps a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And it gives a flavor of what the relationship will be like in the future. So a positive one. So, good. So, okay. I mean, let me go back in time a bit to when you were like finishing your studies and stuff like that. And it seems that at some point in your early career, a point of focus for you became search engine optimization. And of
Yeah,
course it's a great place to be focused because it's a good customer acquisition
yeah.
channel always, or at least it has been. Maybe we'll talk about that, but before we do, as a young person like starting out, how did you decide on this path, or was it kind of destiny, so to speak, that led you there?
Nah, I love that question. I think, look, my story is super long, but I will summarize this. So, originally I'm from the Philippines. It's obvious, and I moved in Dubai right after university,
Hmm.
just trying to figure out life. Um, and I started an engineering background. When I came here, it's very competitive in that space, in that market. So I lean towards on the marketing side, using my technical skill. And I've learned basically by just doing and failing and figure things out. The main, I would say, the opportunity that they came in is from the SEO side. And then, those people who doesn't know, it's like SEO is like, optimizing your website or figuring out or fixing your website to rank in the Google or search engine, if you like. um, it requires a lot of patience for you to basically master the craft, because
Hmm.
during that back in the days, the update of Google or the search engine doesn't, it's not really real time, right? So it's like you're trying to figure it out now, and hopefully after 2 months it will show an outcome. So actually that becomes like, it gives me a perspective of, I would say, patience, right? And that craft, I would say, helped me to enter into a proper corporate job. So that kind of helps me to get a job in Abu Dhabi Media Company, so which is like in Abu Dhabi government. I led, managing and optimizing the national newspaper, Al Ittihad newspaper. And like Al Ittihad is an Arabic content science, right? I'm saying for me to optimize that in something that I don't even know how to read or write, it's another challenging part. But after like 6 weeks, we grew like almost 100x of website impression because the
Wow.
way they make money is like eyeballs and impressions, right?
Yep.
Um, and I stayed there for about 2 years, and then same craft using SEO. I led. I joined. And I was invited to join Etihad Airways because they've seen, what we're doing in Abu Dhabi media. I was like one of the early employees from the digital marketing side,
Hmm.
and then from there, I just again using technical skill from the marketing side. I think this path for me, Ali, I'm just very, very fortunate to do things that I love. For
Mm.
me, like building technologies is something that I've been doing since I was like ninth grade. Like my first, Pentium computer, using Paint. And for me, it's not really work. If that makes sense. For me, it's just more on like, I mean, I like
Yeah.
it's so interesting because I make money on the things that I love. I mean, how cool is that? I think that's the path. I think, did the path choose me? I don't think so because I also had an experience of working in different stuff outside the technology side. But this I think this one I haven't shared to anyone. It's like one of my one of my real job was in Abu Dhabi. I was like, you know, like counterweighter, if that makes sense. It's like I was like punching. I was telling to my mom, I was like, I would like at least to be involved in computer. And then I was hired to become like in the cashier, and I was like, okay, punch like 20 dirhams, right? Or like
Yeah.
shisha.
Yeah.
Right? I think I only last for like 2 hours. It's like this is not for me. I was like,
Hmm.
so I think for me, it's just like my love with computer, my love with technology is. I think it's there, and that's basically how I keep pursuing this path that like, doing things that I love.
And did you like always want to be an entrepreneur someday, or was it kind of that built up over time?
I think the entrepreneurship came from my sixth or seventh year at Etihad. I was very fortunate to experience, um, I would say, my peak of my corporate life at the young age. And my next step on that one, when I was asking myself, was that, you know, how can I still grow, right? How can I still learn? And the only way path on that one is to start a company. Though, despite of that, I mean, I was already kind of building a side hustle, if you like, during like when I was working with a corporate. So it's like, you know, one of the company that I started with my wife called After School. So we're helping parents to book activities for their children, right? And that becomes a lifestyle business. And we partner
Mm.
with like big brands in the UAE, and so. But those ones are something that I enjoy a lot, right? Because you're not only learning technology, but you're also learning like how to deal with people, how to manage culture, and that kind of gives me a different flavor of learning aside from technology and marketing side. And I think that kind of helped me as well in building when I start focusing in my previous company called Denarii, I shut down every single thing because the thinking on that time was in order for me to become successful into one, I just need to focus into one thing. And that
Mm.
kind of um, how I ended up building that company. Um, and maybe that kind of draws me into the entrepreneurship.
Yeah. Interesting. So going back to SEO, I mean, SEO is a superpower, obviously, in terms of customer acquisition, but
Mm-hmm.
things are changing as usual. I mean, with Gen AI, ChatGPT, things are, search engine optimization is not really what it used to be. So how do you can you give us your viewpoint, since you're so experienced in this area, about what's next in terms of people finding our products online and stuff like that?
Of course, I think they're still there, but I think, of course, it start diminishing in my opinion because of the Gen AI and the way we look for answers in the internet, right? But if you think about the premise of SEO, or in order for you to rank in a search engine, is that you need to follow a certain rules, right? That actually set by the search engine, and then put that in your website, and then these multiple factors in order for you to rank, right? So it's in basic terms. So in that idea, there is a mechanism for an internet or for the web to understand and read your website, for them to consume and for them to to present in the search engine. In my opinion, it is the same thing with Gen AI. I think markup languages, structuring your content, prioritizing your content in terms of positioning, what's the most important, which is the least important, would still play a bigger factor. How would you position yourself? How Gen AI would pick up your content, right? Another factor I would say, it's almost the same as search engine. The more people talk about your website from different websites, right? It's like citation, as they called it. Um,
Yep.
will be better for you, or for your website influence to be prioritized or to be ranked, right? I think that's there'll be a new things, new roles will be emerge from this new industry. SEO was not a college degree back in the days, right? So if you think about that, and now you have, I don't know, Gen AI, optimizer, if you like, right? And
Yep.
I
Yep.
think you'll see this community will evolve eventually, and I think that's also exciting.
Yeah, it is. Um, okay, like going to the core story, kind of so to speak, of your after like 15 years of and really rising in the ranks in the corporate world, you decide in 2019 to leave everything behind, to you gain conviction to start Denarii. So I mean,
Yeah.
what what like gave you that conviction, and how did the idea behind Denarii come about?
So yeah, I mean, it's funny looking back. I think I was actually driving from Dubai to Abu Dhabi, and then I said, like, you know what? I think I would just resign today. And then I uh, reached the office, print the resignation, went to my VP office, and said, like, I just want to start a company. Right? But is it okay if I fail? If can I come back? Right? It's an atypical scenario of like get some like security if something like didn't work out.
Hmm.
So basically, Justin Warby, his name, is a very, very good guy. I said, like, yeah, of course, son, right? So I left the company. I don't, again, same thing. I don't even know
So you
what to
didn't have
do.
an idea?
I don't have an idea, right?
Okay.
I said, like, let me just figure things out, like, because it's just so difficult. Like, I always like my risk appetite in company building, Ali, is like super high. It's like, and the thing is, like, I've experienced like 7 years good life experience from the corporate, right? So it's like traveling in a business class, and like government is like paying like everything. To do that
Yeah.
is like you are crazy to do that.
Mm.
And I think like what I've mentioned earlier, I was looking more on, I'm still early, I'm still young, right? I think there's this thing I can do. I think I can go back to the corporate if actually things didn't work out. So I left Etihad and I traveled in different places. I went to back to the Philippines, I went to India, I went to US, I went to Europe. Just like, what is the thing that I can do? And during that time, it was the popularity of the mobile wallet, right? It's like
Hmm.
WeChat, Gojek, Grab, right? I was like, oh my God, we don't have these things in the Middle East. I was like, I think this is an opportunity. And so I went back in the UAE and I started talking to investors and then to other founders. And it's like, or even to family and friends. It's like, I'm going to build a mobile wallet for the region. I was like, John, you're crazy. I was like, how are you going to start with that? A very, very close friend of mine, his name is Paul Ivanov. He's now work in Fresha, but we used to work together in Abu Dhabi Media. He said, like, why don't you start with a small idea first, John, right? And then he asked me, I was like, how long you been here in the UAE? I was like, oh, during that time, it was like 13, 14 years. And he said, like, what is the reason you were here? I was like, I'm a typical, migrant Filipino worker. I send money back home every month to make sure that my family are secured in the Philippines. So, and it's like, why don't
Mhm.
you start with that, right? Why don't, before we become like a mobile wallet, like, why don't you help your fellow Filipino to send money in the Philippines, cheaper, better, faster, and that becomes the aha moment. So that was like, okay, I think it makes sense. We started it, and it grew crazy. I had an opportunity to talk to Sharif during the time he was the partner in 500 startup when they're piloting the program out of Saudi Arabia under MISC. And
Sharif al-Badawi,
you
right?
know
Yeah.
sure, that's correct, yeah. And what I loved during that conversation was he was helping me to paint the bigger picture, because it was my first time in that conversation of VC startup. I said, like, oh, I was like, we are a remit. I mean, I think the way I present company, I was trying to be more kind of fancy way of telling the story, but he kind of pulled me down and kind of pull me back and start helping me to picture the bigger story. And then that becomes like, oh, I like how it sounds. And it's like, basically it kind of I understand fully about what I'm actually building by getting that learning from Sharif. And so I was invited to 500 startup, and then the rest are history. We got acquired by Careem through again, it's a true continuous update, right? I was sending an update to everyone during that conversation, and Mudasir invited me for a breakfast slash lunch or brunch. And again, that's becomes a story of why don't you join Kareem, and uh, and that becomes the acquisition story.
Okay. Before we go into that, because that's interesting part to kind of zoom in on, but um, like, what would you change in your journey looking back in Denarii? I mean, what were the major learnings?
I think it's a good question, Ali. I think there's definitely a lot of post-mortem, but I think one of the key highlights of learning for me that I have make sure that I implement in I roll it out in OCTA was that distribution of weight of how you build a company, right? During the
Mm-hmm.
early days, if you are a solo or founder or two founder, and during the time in Denarii, we are two founders, but majority of the weight of the company is with me. So I'm the one who's thinking
Mm.
about the marketing, about how I talk to the investors, about raising, about product, about acquisition. Though despite of like even we raise money, I during the time I prefer that I should be in control about everything that's moving in the business, right?
Mm.
And that gives me kind of puts me into a toll of like this burnout um, structure of like, man, it's so difficult to run the business or the startup, right? Um, and and I think I definitely wouldn't change now. I think that things like I just want to make sure that this time is that getting the right people around you, right? That can help you to distribute the weight of the company building. Um, will give you more white space or head space to set the mission properly and put more convictions on the things and have a proper structure for the team and the ops side and the product side. And I'm very, very fortunate to have these amazing people at the moment at Okta, right? And the way I always said is like, I feel like um, we gel too much. Like, I guess the structure that I've done, right? I think it's like making sure that everyone is accountable. I empower people with the learnings that I have, and the kind of increase of intuition for all the mistakes that I've had. And then open, transparent communication, and over communicating actually is the one that helps me now. Before, I was like hiding in the boxes, like, oh my God. I always feel and felt that time that was, I always felt judged if I do something wrong, right? I was like, but I mean, there's no
Mm.
perfect way of company building, Ali, right? Because if there's a perfect
Yep.
way of company building, then everyone is successful, right? Um,
Exactly.
So I think that's one of the big thing or the highlight of the kind of the learnings
Hmm.
of my experience at Denarii.
Got it. So at some point, you guys decide that you are going to sell Denarii, or it was going to be acquired. So how did you make that decision? Was it like at some point you decide, you saw that you needed to be part of a bigger thing? I mean, how did that decision get made?
For me, I think during that time, I mean, it's a sequence of event that happens. Um, the business or the technology that we developed, that we figured out, was the one that was the main thing that actually acquired by Careem, and not the consumer business side, right?
Hmm.
That's the first part, which is like moving money across border in different locations, right? Like how fast,
Hmm.
what's the most effective way to send money across border to India, to Pakistan, to the Philippines, right? We learn
Right.
these things like mid end of the company building, and that's the one that actually Karim have acquired, the main thing of that technology. When Where the acquisition happened was that throughout this email sequence that I'm sending. So I think during that time I was doing it like once a month about the status of the company to family and friends, right? So it's also beyond investors. So there's some information or performance metrics that I'm sending to the investors, but also in the grand scheme of things outside that investor, I send what's the most challenging part of building a company. And so that's the second factor of kind of how it becomes a conversation of acquisition. The third part was that we were, and like to be very honest on these things, we were raising money, right? We still have a good amount of money in the bank, but for me, I can already foresee what will be the 6 months gonna look like, right? And maybe it's just my intuition. I was like, if I'm going to backtrack or kind of work backwards, how it's gonna look like, it's better for us to make a decision now and entertain conversation than actually becomes, bleed to death by end of 6 or 8 months. And we try to raise capital, right? I think we believe that uh, we have the opportunity, but people that we talk to believe that we are not in the right shape to raise, right? And and then there's an investor who opened a discussion with the Korean folks, and then it's like, why don't we just have lunch together? And nothing to formalize, right? It's just more like very casual. I just want to see how John thinks, and how they build, right? Because Modasser is actually receiving our email during that time, in company building as well.
So
And
I didn't hear that part. So Mudassir was receiving your emails
so
at the
yeah,
time
so like yeah,
already.
so like
So
yeah, right. So they kind of, in a
how,
sense, yeah.
how did you get him on your list?
So he is one of the LP of one of the VC who invested to us,
Uh huh.
and that
Okay.
becomes like how the information were trailed to him, right? And that's how I see
Oh.
it.
Mm-hmm.
and and then yeah, and then I was invited to have a conversation, and then he asked me like, what's the most difficult thing to start to build a company? I said, like, I mean, everything. I was like, but the first thing that I've said is like, fundraising, of course, is the most difficult part, because it's my first time. I haven't done that before. I'm a builder and I'm an operator, and I believe I've learned a thing or two in company building from the technology side. And then I was invited you know to see what they're doing internally, and of course we're not only talking to Karim during the time, we're talking like to five firms, um, and we believe that the mission that Mudasir shared to me, and the way he wants to become, Karim to become the super app of the region actually, like, makes sense for us, right? The team will also be absorbed, plus the technology. So for us, it's the right fit with the right mindset and the right conviction. And then yeah, and that's when we did sign up to Careem, and we pursued the acquisition.
Okay. And um, how was the company valued? I mean, and I don't know what the acquisition price ended up being, but you know.
I mean, it's definitely. I think I don't think it was shared publicly. But what I could say, Ali,
Hmm.
it's definitely a good outcome for everyone, right? It's not if I would say it's like if it's a big exit, then probably I won't be building a company again. I think I'll be in the yacht or in the beach. But I think it's a definitely good outcome, especially to the team who have uh, I work with, who are still with Kareem at the moment, and managing and working the technology side are, I would say, made right. So I think they're secured. The
Hmm.
way and the good thing on that one is basically we are, you know it is it is a shares acquisition, right? So, and because Uber
Mm.
acquired Kareem, so it's like
Increased the value.
it's a liquid, right?
Right.
Um, and when I when I walk out uh, after 15 months, I basically left like millions and millions of dollars in the table, right? um, and for me, the reason for that is that I would still want to be hungry and kind of still have this urge of building a company. I think the opportunity cost is much higher for me than staying.
Hmm.
I think that's how I would answer the question.
Hmm. So, but on the other hand, I mean, you didn't leave all the money. You know, you kept some money to be at least
Yeah,
comfortable, probably.
yeah, yeah.
So the question, I guess, for you is: do you think having this safety net has made you a better founder, or or the opposite? Maybe you're taking less risks.
No, I think I like when I listen on one of your podcasts with Khalid Talhuni from Noah Capital, kind of answer one of your questions about, becoming a fund manager from the VC side. I think you need to be a could have like a little bit of stability, right? I think my risk is still higher. I think having this stability or a little bit of comfortability, making sure that the family are covered, um, and then I could take risk on different direction from my side, right? um, I wouldn't say complacent, but I'm still excited every day when I wake up in the morning. I was like, oh my god, we're going to solve these challenges, let's make it happen, let's go, right? Stability helps me a lot in terms of broadening out the creativity side, um, without pressuring myself in terms of we don't have money in the bank, for example, right? I was like, so
Yep.
now the focus is making sure that let's just build the right business. Let's just build a good business. Let's just build a durable business. So this becomes the focus now, right? And
Right.
with the same speed of velocity of experimentation becomes the more priority than actually we need money tomorrow. We need money tomorrow, right? So for me, it's kind of changed the way we play in the playing field of um, we are good with any money. Now we have a luxury of choosing the right partner for us to operate, right? And we do the same due diligence to the VC that we would like to work with and the way they do it to us. Before, I don't have that opportunity, right? Before, I was like, man, like, give me a capital, I'll build anything, right? I was
Yep.
like,
Yep.
but that basically it does help. It does help.
Yeah. So it probably actually increases the ambition almost, because and the creativity and the freedom to take it to the maximum, so to speak.
100%. And I think it's like the question is like we don't know, it's like what is too much for you to be complacent, right? Because it's like when I left Kareem, it was like 15 months, and it's like I don't want to be too complacent when I join or if I
Right.
start a new company. So I still want to be
Yeah.
that urge thing, and I think I think I'm in the right space.
Yeah. So speaking of the 15 months you stayed with Kareem, I'm sure there was like an integration process where after they acquired you, you were integrated. What was that process like in terms of what are the best practices in your opinion in,
Yeah,
for
I think
integrating after acquisition? Yeah.
so. I think that's basically where I met my co-founder Nupur, who now helped me to one of my co-founder to operate Okta, and we met when I joined Careem, and she was the one who's leading the integration side and the strategy of Denarii, the strategy of integration of Denarii through Careem. The beauty of these things, and I don't want to like brag it just for the sake of bragging it, Ali. But I think we definitely built an amazing product, right? And I always say these things from the technical side that I always see these things as like from painting perspective. So I would say everyone can paint, but not everyone can be an artist. And I think the way we built Denarii was actually like it's amazingly in how it was crafted. Um, and the integration were actually smooth because it's already outside the core business that we have from the consumer side, which is the mobile app of sending money, sending money to different places. Um, I the expectation was to, I think the way, if I'm not mistaken, don't quote me on these things if it's right.
Hmm.
I think it took us like 2 months to integrate. It only took us 2 months to integrate the platform, right?
In terms of product,
Because in terms of product, right? Because we
but what
have
about the team and the process and things like that?
it was very challenging initially, but it requires multiple cycles of where we should be sitting in. But the focus was initially to integrate Okta. That's the main premise. The engineering team were blended into the engineering side, of course, but the structure of Careem is like very focused in terms of the services that they are providing. So you have
Hmm.
Careem Pay, you have the
Rides,
groceries and the
etc.
ride hailing,
Yeah.
right? And so
Yeah.
we sit in the we work with
Okay.
Madiha from the Careem Pay, right? And my
Mm.
job is to make sure that we only achieve the integration side, but making sure that it's working properly, of course, and then growing that business. I would say it's. I mean, it is actually good experience. It's great experience, right? It's my one of great experience of working very very closely with Mudasir, right? Learning how he thinks. Like the way I look at Mudasir is you know is that I learn a lot of things from him when I'm just like even listening and then watching him how he conduct his company building side. I think from that point, I've also learned a lot. From the operational side, I like the way it was structured. I think there's a massive machinery inside Careem. They've done very, very well in terms of structure. That in a way, we're also following that in how we build Okta. So that experience is actually great.
Cool. So, looking back, of course, I mean, there are lots of positive things, great outcomes, but do you have any regrets about selling? Do you sometimes think if I had taken this, the stable coins are now part of remittances and things are growing, and all that stuff?
I mean, I definitely, I would say that I would say I don't really put a lot of pressures in terms of regrets. I think when after the acquisition, it still took me a while to accept the fact um, that we were acquired. Um, and I would like to be, very, very honest with you. I mean, I didn't take it lightly. I was come to the point that I didn't really go out after the acquisition. I was just like, you know, working from home, going back to showing to the office. Um, you know, I still have this in denial that I wish I could have done it. Right? Definitely.
Mm.
I did seek some coach, if you like, or therapist, right? For me to get back up to my feet. But the beauty was that I have a very very good supporting system, right? People are checking on me, um, and um, and it's basically a great outcome, right? I think I was just like super stubborn, like I wish I could have definitely continued it, but I won't say regret, but I think it just like more on like it took me a while to realize that hey, I'm going back in the corporate world. I think that's the one.
Mm,
You know, like majority of course of the investors were very very supportive, right? Um, of the transactions and of the outcome, and they've been checking on me. I think again that I think one of the learning in there is to get the right people around you. Makes a huge difference. Makes a huge
mm,
difference when you're running a company, right? And talk to other founders. Talk to other founders as well. I think that's another one, right? We think as a founder, you think that you're the only one that's having the same challenge, that the challenges that you're experiencing, and you'll be surprised how many founders who have experienced the same experience that you had,
exactly.
and you will only realize like, oh my god, I'm not the only one who's actually experienced this thing. It's like, oh, how did you navigate these things? And that helps me when I start doing this founders breakfast, that it was not only me, right? That I've experienced this life death situation of the company building side of in different from different perspectives. So that's a good thing basically, and that's the learning I have.
Nice. So, yeah, and I think it's a common thing, as you said. I've heard it before, and so you're perfectly normal. And as
Yeah.
well, now you've turned it into fuel, kind of for the next startup. So it's great in that way. I've also seen that you do some angel investing. So I was wondering about your approach there, especially since I noticed, for example, you have an investment in Aura, which is a bit similar to Okta. So it was interesting to see, and how you're approaching investing in general.
I mean, there's no framework on these things, Ali. To kind of to be frank and to be honest with you,
Hmm.
I think my motivation initially to start with is that one of the reason to pay it forward, right? I was very very fortunate to give me an opportunity and to get the trust from my stakeholders, from the people that are involved in this company, to give me an opportunity to build something, right? I mean, the facts are I'm not from here, right? I definitely work from here. It took me a while to kind of to build this relationship, and for me, the way to give this, you know, back to the community is to invest to the next generation founders who I believe into the founders despite of the product, despite of the idea, um, and yeah, and hence that's the reason why I invest in those companies. I mean, with the likes of Aura and Mala, I think the way we all look at things in my opinion, I think the market is massive, right? I mean, there's a different layer and sectors of payments and B2B and B2B commerce and almost the same approach that I've done it in my previous company. There'll be definitely, and I hope it's gonna happen, one point in time there'll be a consolidation of these players in the market, right? Be it big players who kind of get hopefully we acquire them or they get to acquire us, and I think that's basically the thinking behind it. um, and there's a complementary for each of these businesses, right? Aura is one of our financier who does finance our receivable side, right? In some of the players, we are the one who's handling the collection side of the business, right? um, and that's basically how we complement. And in my opinion, it helps to for the ecosystem to thrive and to grow and to accelerate the learning as well at the same time.
Got it. So, speaking of like accelerating the ecosystem in general and helping it, so you've taken the path of building in public with Okta.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
was that like, did it just kind of, was that an immersion thing, or was it a deliberate strategy in terms of Okta, and how did you approach it? And how do you,
I think
approach it, and how do you benefit from it?
it is deliberate. It is something that when Nupur and I were sitting and we said like, you know what, um, let's when we decided we work together to build this company, one of my non-negotiable ask is that I would like to build in public, and the reason for that is that throughout this journey of company building, and throughout my experiences as well, there's a lot of founders still don't know how to manage these things, right? That's number one. And I believe that if we can all, like, founders who have had an experience in building a company, to give back something, even just from the informational perspective, how to approach fundraising, how to build a company, how to approach culture, that kind of helps to grow and helps the ecosystem mature, right? It's a very, very tiny, small amount of participation, contribution. But in my opinion, if we do it collectively, it does, and it will actually impact the ecosystem overall. And kind of to avoid some of the bad actors, right? And that's we've seen in our ecosystem. So that's basically one of the thinking and one of the idea of why I would like to do it. I definitely was not. No, I'm not the first one who have done these things. I'm not sure if you know um, Omar Kasim, right? An ex
Hmm.
previous founder of Jadopado, right? He was the first one who created this building in public, and that's basically kind of inspires me back in the days. Like, I wish, if I start a company, I would like to follow his footstep about communicating to the wider audience, right? um, and also kind of, again, it's also a point of discussion, right? Like, for example, in this conversation, right, it's a topic of building in public, so there's something to connect with as well. Helps me not to just sell Okta and sell what I'm actually offering, but it's actually like a purpose of why we're doing these things. So I think it's just that's how um, I've chosen to build in public, right? And then this narrative of um, and we've seen this thing in ecosystem, like, as the ecosystem matures from the funding perspective, is that when we started my previous company, the relationship between VC and founder is basically, it's not balanced, right? And I've seen these things where when I send that information to someone, I felt that I don't control that narrative of what I'm telling, right?
Mm.
Because that person only holds that information and could actually bend or twist and have a different way of understanding how I pitch my company to other VCs
Right.
or to other players in the market. And I think allowing me to put those information to, again, to level the playing field, that everyone sees it and you judge whether this is good or not. I mean, I will definitely let you do that, but I don't want someone to control, in terms of how I would like my team or my product, myself, to be perceived outside there, right? And of course, there's a lot of, like, advantage and disadvantage on that one, right? But I think for me, I was like, if will be my last company, I'll put like 200% here, and let's make it happen.
But what are the disadvantages?
Because there's the paper trail, right? So it's like everyone can quote you anytime, right?
Uh,
Right? So for me, it's like, I make sure that every information that I build in there is actually organized by date, like all the things that I've said, because it can be quoted, right? And once you put online, it will always be there, right? But I
Absolutely.
think, I mean, Ali, it's like building public is not the only thing that we're doing, right? Like, for example, like, we're doing the Friday forum with the team of Okta. We're recording these things
Hmm.
as well, um, and we're sharing this to the internal investors, like how I communicate to my team and how I approach the challenges and how we're
Hmm.
solving these things are also open to the people that we are working with from the stakeholder side, plus the email side, in a newsletter update as well. I think it does help more than actually gives an advantage, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would agree, definitely. You spoke a bit about building in the region as an expat with no established network. So, I mean, just coming from that area, could you elaborate on that? Because, most of the founders in the UAE ecosystems are expats, of course. So it's kind of
Mhm.
how the ecosystem is designed really helps with that. So can you like double click on that?
Yeah, I think there is the way, in my opinion, how initially when I was perceived, right, that there's a lot of factors or reason that needs for them to check, or the box that needs to be checked for me to get access to the capital. And that would be like, what if John lives and go back to the Philippines, right? Because he's not from here, right? How would you handle Arabization, for example, right? how would you deal with the
Mm.
local culture in terms of building a relationship and doing your sales side? So this is the premise of the expat, my story of my conversation. Like this is the reason of why it's difficult for me, like an expat coming from
Mm.
here, to have the same level of um, accessing to the capital, right?
Yeah.
Um, I've completely my background is completely different. I didn't come from an MBA institution where I get a master degree. I came from a hardship of learning from the ground up. I was a programmer and engineer before, and then I took 20 years to make these things happen, right? Because the way I'm thinking is that I'm not enough to get that, to be on
Mm.
that table to
Yep.
participate.
Yep.
And the reason for that is that feedback that I'm getting, and this is not, it's not only in my, I'm thinking, but this is what I'm actually receiving and feedback from the ecosystem, that if you don't get a local founder, then you're not, you won't be able to participate on that one, right? I think so. I need to work 3 times, 4 times harder to be able to have the opportunity to sit in the table, right? I'm okay with that, right? And I think and that's what we're doing. Um,
Hmm.
and yeah, I
Any
think
like
I've
special advice for how to put people's doubts kind of to sleep, or to make them feel more comfortable as an expat uh, with your background?
I think show and tell, right? I think that's the reason why constant communication, over communicating things and telling where you at gives confidence and conviction to you, right? I think if I can show that I can outwork, I can outwork, in my opinion, other founders by working 3 times and 4 times harder. That's already, for me, in my opinion, that could be give me a signal that, like, man, I'm taking this seriously,
Yeah, that's
right?
the strongest
Um,
advantage, right?
yeah,
Cool. Um, all right. So actually, I'll go back to I mean, you've had a co-founder in Denarii. You have two co-founders in OCTA at the moment. And if you were like advising young, as you advise like young founders now, what advice do you give them about this relationship, the co-founding relationship, how to choose co-founders? Because it's really pivotal for the success of companies. So
agree.
how to choose, how to manage the relationship and set it up well. I mean, what would you tell young founders that you talk to?
I think the best way to do it is to stress test the relationship, right? Um, do a couple of exercises about, how do you operate as an individual, what is your values, right? How would you how would you deal with tough conversation, have this like candid conversation about the difficulties of managing, running a business. I think one of my advantages, I set these things because I've seen it from the past. So kind of I try and help my co-founders to bring this in the table, because if we are all first time founders and get all this excitement of let's just build it, and then later on it becomes more problematic, it will be a challenge down the line. So I think my advice would be stress test it, right? One of the things that we've also, I mean, because Nupur, my co-founder, I've worked with her in Okta, we have this relationship for 15 months. So I always
Hmm.
said when I talk to other people internally was that, man, I mean, Nupur, she's very sharp and she's really good as an operator. I mean, why she's like working in a corporate? She should be running her own business. That's what I would say. Then when we all decided together, like we were working together, so that the operating part, in my opinion, was already what's checked. Now the thing that we would need to test was that would we able to work together, like gel together from the task, from the toughness, like how difficult to run a business or a company or a startup, right?
Hmm.
So we did and went, we hire a coach, um, and then the coach kind of guide us in terms of the values of what is, what is what's our motivation of joining or starting a companies, all of these things.
Hmm.
And then we talked about it. We talk about some tough conversation as well, right? And kind of helps you to make your relationship stronger, right? But one of the beauty of the things that happened to us was when we joined 500 Accelerator program as a second time. For me as a second time
Mm-hmm.
founder, for her as a first time founder. Because joining an accelerator program, Ali, is that it compounds the learning and it compounds this execution because there's a speed and it helps you
Mm.
to stress test the difficulties of startup, right? And during the program, that actually give us like we keep pushing each other through the limit, like no sleeps and figure things out, and then we adjust, we learn together, and I think that's I would say that would be my advice, right? Sit down together, learn from each other, get some value, learn
Mm-hmm.
from the values and how you work and how you operate. If you have an opportunity, I mean, maybe I'm biased, join 500 startup.
Yeah. And yes, you probably are biased, but they are a great program, of course. Uh,
They are, yeah.
uh, so, I mean, and what about decision making? Did you set a framework for how you were going to make decisions together beforehand, or
Yeah.
is it something that emerged?
No, we did have a founder agreement. We did set,
Yeah.
what
It's.
what decision that requires one founder, what decision
Hmm.
requires two founders, who's the ultimate decision, right? We've done these
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
because we don't want this missing. It's like, and because I've seen these things with other founders, right? And because I've talked to a
Exactly.
lot of them as well. It's like, you know, it end up a little bit messy when
Yep.
things working well, and then that becomes the fallout of a company, right? And
Exactly. No, it's really important point. So,
sounds small, by the way, Ali. It sounds small, but I mean, it becomes problematic down the
yeah,
line.
yeah. Two smart people, both of them, uh, have different opinions, and now we have a big problem if we haven't decided beforehand how we're going to decide.
Yeah, I agree.
So you're, I think, a father of three, and I saw a post recently with your son playing
Yeah,
football with him, and I was wondering about how fatherhood affects being a founder. Has it made it easier, harder?
yeah.
How do you reflect on that?
Definitely exciting. I mean, I think for me, parenting at the early, at the young age actually helps me to be accountable and be responsible, right? Because at the early
Mm,
young age, I already start working for someone else, but not for me, right? And the motivation is that it's for the family, and that kind of grains into my work habits. So I would say definitely it helps me shape, um, you know, I would say making the right decision, but reason and purpose of why I am doing things, right? And I
mm,
think that helps me. Like, I think that I would say that one, right? It gives me purpose,
hmm.
gives me reason of, and at the same time working on something that I love. I think
Yeah,
that helps me to shape my person, as a person, in as a founder as well.
great. So, what are the going? You spoke about 500, and you mentioned a couple of your investors, but what are the characteristics in general of the best investors and of the worst investors?
I would say, best and worst. So again, I guess from my experience from the previous one and my investors now, what I've learned is like it always depends on the founder. How would you manage your expectation from your investor, right? Because this notion of investors always have like this. I think, and what I've seen is that, hey John, it's like, let me know if let me know where I can help, and then I'm willing to help. So it's very vague, right? There's no guidance of where it is and how would you ask that question. And what I've learned throughout this Okta, and from the previous one, is like, if I'm going to demand from my investor specific things every week, then they're creating value for me, right? So now the way I rally my
Hmm.
investors, like all my investors are great, and then I let everyone work for me or for the company, not for me.
Hmm.
So every week, as or we're doing this bi-monthly now, Ali, is like I have a specific task for each investors for them to come back to me before the following update, right? And the
Mm-hmm.
most bigger thing, or depending on my investor correct composition, but majority of my investors, their superpower is the Rolodex, the people that they know, right?
Mm-hmm.
So for them, I make sure that I ask specific things that they don't use too much of the energy for them to help
Mm-hmm.
me. So I'll give you an example. That could be like, hey, can you please connect me to the founder of Clara, for example, or Patrick Rogers? It's very, very specific, right? I wouldn't say it's
Mm-hmm.
like, can you please connect me to FNB industry that is the size of 1, 2, 3, 4? It's like I don't, because most likely we won't get a response from that, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So I'm making sure that I kind of try to also help them to help me access their network. That's number one. And then the knowledge and experience. One of my amazing investor, and I'm sure all of my investors are amazing because this will be recorded.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. One of them.
During
Mm-hmm.
the during, during the early days, like Kuna Capital, Monica, the managing partner, were very, very helpful, right? And because they've invested to similar companies like us in other emerging market, they've
Mm-hmm.
seen it all, right? And she's, they are we're very grateful for them to introduce us to these founders who have done these things like successfully, 5 years, 8 years, 3 years, and that kind of helped us to leapfrog the learning that we're supposed to actually learn, like as we build a
Yeah.
company. um, I think that's one. Um, and I think I like the way they structure their value creation as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
They basically give you, it's like, hey John, this is our acquisition path. I would say program, but like this is the acquisition segment where you can learn, right? If you like acquisition, this is like financing, or how to do your culture, company culture, right? It's like they have this like frame, I would say
Mm-hmm.
framework, but they have this material, or people that we can talk to. So they have this like different specialists that we can tap into anytime,
Mm-hmm.
right? And it's in there. It's up to us founders to basically continuously
Of course.
asking them. It's like, hey, can you please, right? I think one, and different, right? Different. Like my very, very fortunate to have this very strong list of investors that I do have, and from Sado Capital, Kusai, who I've known him even back before Denarii,
Yeah.
through when he was working at Capital, Asher, Walid, and Fares from Sukna, 500 Global,
Yeah.
of course, plus VC. Um, they're very helpful, and the characteristic would be different from each other depending on how what we need from the help perspective.
So I like how you diplomatically change this into talking about how to manage investors, and of course, I know personally some of the investors on your cap table. They're so great, but I'm just talking in the general sense. Like what should, if I'm a founder founding a company, I'm raising money, what should I try to avoid in terms of a pattern? Is there any advice there?
Of a pattern. I think,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think it's necessary. I mean, I think this is true in my experience, right?
Hmm.
If you start overselling your company to us, to an investor, then it's not the right fit, right?
Right.
They probably VC does have a reason um, why they're not participating on the round, or why they're not investing to you, right? And I don't take that
Hmm.
seriously. I don't take that personally. Um, I don't think, don't oversell yourself. Um,
Right.
I think that one. Um, what else? I think, ask portfolio founders. I think that's also gonna help me to figure out and find
Very
out, right?
important. Yep.
And I've done this to every single founders VC that invested to me this time, right? Be it with Kuna, be it with Sado, be it with Sukna, be it, I mean, 500, of course, right? And plus VC, it's like, um, I've asked other founders that they've invested into, and it's like, what's it like, right? Because I would like to make sure that this is a long-term relationship, and that's how I basically see it. In terms of pattern, um, I mean, I wouldn't say I've seen it all, but I've experienced some, right? Um, and it's just so difficult. But I would say it's, I don't know how to say, what would be the best way to say it, but if I'm going to give a specific ones, um, be cautious and be clear of what you're asking. Are you pitching? Are you raising? Right? Because it's also
Mm.
kind of some of my mistakes during the early days, and or even on this round. Like I went into some of the firm where I didn't knew that they invested to some of the players that's almost overlapped to our company, right? And then we
Mm.
shared that information, and then we found out later on that, oh, they invested this, but why we were not told,
Competitors.
right? So,
Right.
right, and yeah, right, and maybe I would say pattern, but it's also an obligation for the founders to make sure that there's a clear ask or a clear information of what's the intention of the conversation, so that we won't go in
Yep.
that down the line, right? So um, I think that's
So
it.
yeah, that's interesting. So maybe a final question before we do the quick questions, quick fire to round up. If you had a magic wand and you can change one thing about the regional startup ecosystem, what would that thing be?
I think more openness of sharing the failures, so that people actually can pick up and learn more from that. And I think the only way to thrive is to hear all the war stories and battle scars. And I think we romanticize too much of successful startups, and I'm included me as well. But I think
Hmm.
um, from the past, there's a lot of great founders who have could have tell a story um, that other founders or new generation could actually learn from it, in terms of company structure, in terms of hiring, in terms of company building. I
Hmm.
think this one, right? I think this we're very fortunate where we are in a region where there's a lot of support from institution, right? From the government, there's a lot of program, um,
Yep.
and I think that's one of the things that's missing at the moment.
Yeah. Cool. So maybe I'll go through the some quick fire questions. The first is: is there any book or books that you like to recommend to others?
I don't. I mean, I don't read that much of a book, but I think one of the things that I like was that the hard things of the hard things. Or, I
Yeah.
think that one.
The hard
Uh,
thing about hard things.
by Anderson Horowitz. I think it's when
Yeah,
you actually
Ben
build.
Horowitz.
Yeah, with Ben Horowitz. I think when you are building a company and you start reading that one, you will start. Oh, it's like, my God, it's like this is like the notion of they've also experienced what I've experienced. I was like, and
Exactly.
they've actually managed to overcome that one. It's like visualizing that experience. I think it's. I would say that one. I would say that one.
Nice. So, how do you unwind and how do you stay energized?
Um, I'm still. I mean, for me, it's spending with the family. I think that for me, it's like watching movies with the kids, right? So I just want to make. I always make sure that during breakfast we eat all together. During dinner we eat together.
Nice.
That's basically my being presence as a father or kind of as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
Now, like for me individually, like going to the gym, doing ice bath recently. I think that's one. I think that actually helps me to energize. But I think for
Mm.
me, it's like talking to founders as well. I think that's something that I really like.
Mm. Yeah, it is. So, who do you think we should have as a guest or guests on the podcast?
I love that. I think I always share these things to people that I talk to. I think what we're missing, in my opinion, Ali, in the way like all this podcasting, I think we need more operator, the one who's doing the nitty gritty stuff. I think we have so much podcasts who
Mm.
does like interviewing founders and the CEOs.
I think it would be great to learn from, who's the top five marketers in the region that actually can give five tactics to help you market your product. I think that would be amazing, right?
Mm,
Five top product managers who help you. So I would say, um, um, you know, um, I'm thinking from the operating perspective, someone from Talabat, maybe, right? As like how to
mm,
grow the business from 0 to 1 to 100, right? Of course, from Careem, right? I think they're doing very well in terms of
yep,
growing from all in perspective. I think a lot of people will pick up learnings from there.
I'm sure.
I think, from the leadership side, it would be great to hear the story of um, Lean Technologies. I think it's an interesting one, right? I think Hisham, the CEO of Lean, right? I think that one would be an interesting story, right? And how did he started the early days of Lean, and from 0 to 1, right? The war stories. Kalo, I think Amit from Kalo. I think that's an interesting story to hear as well.
Mm,
But I think, yeah, so I think that's one or two. Sorry for having a different
no
answer.
worries. No
But on the side note, I think, Ali, we should focus on like more operators, the one who's doing the nitty gritty
operators.
part. Yeah,
Yeah, you want to go into the details of how the best practices.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's good.
So, what question should I have asked you that I didn't?
What question did you ask me? Well, I think you asked me already that, but which is I did not answer. The price of acquisition, I think, I I cannot stay away on that. Um, I think the future of Okta. How do I see Okta? Right,
Yeah, 5 years from now.
5 years from now, maybe 10 years from
Yeah,
now.
tell me about it.
Yeah. Um, I I think it will be definitely a global company. I think there will be definitely, you have you already rolled out the AR part or the account receivable in the Middle East, right? I think opening up Europe, maybe an opportunity in Asia. I think looking at the embedding financing as a second phase from the other region, right?
Hmm.
I think working with great talented people. I think level the playing field from the salary as well, right? I think that's also something that we would like to do. Making sure that everyone have the same opportunity working for a startup, having the right salary structure. Yeah, I think that would be the 5 years goal for Okta.
Yeah. So, my last question, I always like to end on a note of gratitude, as you might know from the previous episode. So, what is a gift someone has given you that has had a large positive effect on your life?
Not necessarily to be material,
No,
is it?
no, usually it's not material, actually.
I think I think trust, Ali. I think people give me an opportunity to trust me to do something and build something. Um, so I don't take that for granted. I think that one, the reason why I'm actually doing these things and doing things that I love, because people have trusted me of taking a shot, all right, on the dream that or the ambition that we would like to do, that I would not take for granted. Is that answers the question?
Yeah, it's not like from a specific person, but I guess a lot of people trusted you, and you have been up to the trust. So, and on that note, I hope I was fit. You know, I didn't betray your trust in managing this conversation, and I thank you for your time.
No, it's amazing call, and thank you so much for the privilege, Amali.
Thank you, John. Thank you for listening to this episode of Startups Arabia podcast. If there was something you really liked about what the guest said today, reach out to them on social media and tell them what you liked. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? You don't want to miss any of our great upcoming episodes. Also, please rate us and give us comments on our social media accounts so that we know how to improve. And also tell us what you like. We don't mind hearing that either. Until next time, this was your host, Ali Zwail.